behalf of Canada Basketball and CBOC, it is my pleasure to introduce you to and welcome Perry Stothart as we continue in our series, Canada Returns to Basketball. Perry is one of Canada's premier officials. He is a recently retired FIBA official and currently serves as one of Canada's FIBA commissioners. Perry has worked many Canadian championships, and this past summer was on the championship game of the CBL. Perry has served in a variety of administrative positions for the Edmonton Basketball Officials Association, and he is currently the president of the Alberta Basketball Officials Association. I've known Perry for many years, and we have worked Canada West together for the past 25 years. Perry is the only person on the Canada West panel that I have blocked from working, so I don't work with Perry. We just don't work well together. Perry is a wonderful clinician and teacher. We are looking forward to his presentation this evening on the importance of building a brand as a referee. Perry, welcome. I know you'll have a great presentation, and we appreciate all that have joined us this evening as we return to basketball.
All right, well, thanks, John. For those of you that have worked with John, it's regardless of his twisted sense of humor, it's always a pleasure, and he's one of the good ones. And you know, I'll touch on this thought a bit today as we run through the presentation, but the idea of working with great people, and John's definitely one of those guys that makes my heart smile. So thanks for that, John, and it's good to see you. I'll be starting the presentation here in a second. I'm going to stretch it out a bit because it's nice to see some faces for once before that actually gets going, and I get to stare at the screen and see maybe the 2 or 3 of you. But there might be 2 or 3 of you that stay up in the right corner of my screen for the presentation. So just, be as engaging as you can. It'll help me drive through this as we can. Hutch, that's exactly what I'm talking about. See, so it'll help me get through this. So I was asked to share this presentation with you. It's one that I had delivered to the officials in Southern Ontario, Appeal Board, and others. I've made some adjustments to that original presentation. It won't deviate too much, but I think I've added a few things and improved it in ways. And kind of in terms of this presentation, what I want you guys to think about through it is sort of the vibe, the narrative that I have, that I came up with to go through this, and the idea of what's your brand in terms of tying this into sort of a marketing background that I have. The idea that what we put out there is what people see and judge you on, and how we can have control of that process. And then we get to make decisions as referees. Again, in terms of what we put out there, what is our brand? What are people saying when they see us? And we'll talk about a few different things. Obviously, some of them are, the physical in terms of, poise and presence and how we carry ourselves on the court, how we communicate. Those are some elements, but I'm gonna go a little bit deeper than that. And the idea that, in a sales environment, if that's what we're in, where we're putting out a really good product and we want people to buy that product, is the idea that if we believe internally that we have the best product, I think that inherently we do a better job of selling it. If you have to sell something you don't believe in, it's more difficult. And the idea is that we can work on ourselves as unfinished products to get ourselves to that point sooner rather than later. Where we walk on the floor, we walk out of our front door in the morning, and it doesn't matter if it's to a basketball game or to our day jobs, whatever that might be, but we walk in or walk out believing in the product, and that shows. And I think it shows in all kinds of ways that are sometimes, subconscious and sometimes more overt. And so that's sort of the thought process I had as I was doing this. And so, keep that in mind. Again, the other thing, and those of you that, have spent time with me and know me, John would be in that category. Nadine, I saw you too. It's great to see your face also. There's lots of you on this call that I know. And, at heart, I'm an optimistic dude. And while I like cracking jokes and keeping things light, that's important for me. And so everything I'm going to say is going to come from 2 inherent things. I have an optimistic heart, and I'm really competitive. And so, I enjoy the interactions with people. I like people. And so I'm going to challenge you, but I'm going to challenge you with a smile on my face. And, because that's how I am. And so that's sort of the vibe. So if you ever hear a question, or I pose a question within this presentation and he's like, whoa, he's really trying to stick it to me. Not really. I'm just trying to get you to think. I want you to think. I want you to be inspired in ways that have nothing to do with the content that is coming out of my mouth. And I found that on a personal level often when I participate in these kinds of presentations. And so, that's sort of my vibe, and that's my foundation for what I'm building on today. And hopefully, that comes across as we spend some time together today. So I'm going to share my screen here, and we will get going here. And then I'm just going to. All right. So it should be up. Everybody's got that full screen look. Okay, so what's your brand? So I alluded to this. Marketing is easy when you build the best product, and that's what we're going to focus on today. Now, I talked about finding those things, being inspired in a way that is outside of the content of my words. And I often find that it doesn't matter if I'm in a basketball seminar, if I'm in a work seminar. I know we've all been doing Zooms like crazy over the last 18 months. Some of us much before that. Some of us have been, we know what Zoom's about. But whether it's in-person presentations or whatever it is, there's always things that I hear that take me in my mind off on a way that is kind of for me and what I need to hear. And maybe I can, connect a few dots to my own life, whether it's on a personal or family level. I might be hearing something that's related to family dynamics or family relationships or how to be a good parent. And I'm going to use those kinds of things in other areas of my life, whether it's my work, business life, or even my officiating life, and vice versa. I might see a great quote and I'll often apply that across the board or different things. And so some of these principles, I would encourage you to do that as well. I find they are the most powerful, but they're also the best way to sort of absorb it into your life and activity. If you want to be a better official, we talk about repetition. We talk about watching video. I'm going to talk about some more deeper principles today, which I think will help. But the idea is that it's all interconnected. And if you can compartmentalize your life in a way in terms of your organization, that's one thing. We understand we got to compartmentalize that. If we all talk about leaving your life at the door when you walk into a gym, maybe it's been a really tough day. We don't need you to be a visual stressor so everybody can see on the court that you've had a tough day. I understand that. Same at work. Maybe you're in a customer service environment at work and it's things at home are really tough right now. And so you got to put on a happy face while we're out there, or at least put on a brave face. I get that. I'm not talking about that kind of compartmentalization. I don't think we should ever hear something that we say, oh, that's not going to apply to me in this other area of my life. I believe that everything you hear in any minute could apply to any facet of your life with the proper perspective. And, that's kind of, the vibe of what I wanted to start with this opening slide. Okay, so we're in a performance-based avocation, right? We talk about making friends and the relationships in basketball. They by far and away are the most, are the best part of what it is to be a basketball referee. I think you hear that consistently. I've definitely found that. John was joking in the beginning, and he's sort of joking. There was a couple of times, we had some rough times we had to get through, but when the guy stands in the key for 10 seconds, you're supposed to blow your whistle at least once. Just throwing that out there, John. But if you ever want to referee a game in an hour and 4 minutes, McFarland's your guy. But the fact is we're in a performance-based avocation. And so we can not only compare ourselves to each other, but ourselves as well. Like, did I improve over the last game? An evaluator perhaps has seen you, they've given you some feedback. Maybe it's within a tournament setting. Are you making improvements from day to day? That's one advantage of tournament settings or some of these summer basketball camps or even summer national tournaments where they're longer, a week long. Some of them, then they give you an opportunity to really, steepen that learning curve, if you will, and there's an opportunity to really grow. But even within a season, from season to season. And so we're constantly comparing ourselves to others. I know that for a fact. Like, why did she get that game and I didn't get that? Or, I've heard lots of circumstances or stories of people who, if your conference publishes all the games, you get your assignments that you have to accept, but you can go look at the slots, and then see who's in every game. And there's people that actually go do that. Yeah, okay. I mean, I guess I understand that on a level. But I've even heard about officials expressing to the assigner after they've checked that list. That I understand a little bit less. If curiosity is really getting to you, okay. But I'm going to tell you, that's the kind of choice that's going to lead you a path that's going to be antithetical to your success. And if you want to get in your own way, I'm going to tell you right now, the best way to do it is to go look at everybody else's games and send an email, like in writing, with really big words to your assigner, trying to straighten them out. Because, your schedule will be clear, and maybe the people at home who want to spend more time with you will have an opportunity to do that. But not only comparing ourselves to others, but ourselves, I'm going to talk today about the idea about perspective and what it means and how we can sort of not only hurt our development, but again, we sort of tie ourselves down in that comparison. I think the much healthier comparison, or in terms of performance, is focusing on yourself, because you can make those improvements quicker. And sometimes, at the end of the day, like, what are we doing this for? I'm going to talk about it in the coming slides about picking the why, but the idea of subjectivity always factors into officiating, because the one thing about what we do is we do require assigners, evaluators, perhaps partners who are giving feedback. It's their perspective. And in the case of assigners or, maybe tournament evaluators who are assigning games, it has an inherent impact on the games you're doing. And so the idea that, oh, wow, I didn't, so-and-so got that game, because subjectivity is a thing that's in our game. It's not like whoever ran the fastest to that finish line, wins. And so the idea I want to get across, though, and really encourage you to do, is understand that the perspective in your officiating life, in your daily life, is completely in your hands. And that, to me, at the core of officiating and refereeing games, is the best thing about what we do. Whatever we choose to do is within our power. And so when we can exercise that power, it's really important to do that, and to we can benefit from that. So presence. I want to talk about presence. Presence in terms of how we look, how we portray ourselves, how we carry ourselves. I kind of alluded to that off the top. We are judged by outward expressions of our inner commitment, and that is a fact. And so when we talk about outward expressions, what I'm saying is, I'm not just saying, how do you carry yourself in maybe a post game? Are you accepting of feedback and things like that? That is definitely one of those things. But I'm talking about simpler stuff, like on a Zoom call, if your camera is on. If you don't think that your assigners, especially as you get to the higher levels, college and university assigners, and I saw some of them on this call, if you don't think they are scrolling through in gallery mode 9 tiles at a time to see who's all on this call, you're kidding yourself. Absolutely doing that. And if you're on this call and you leave your camera on, which I'm good with, I'm not going to show any videos, so I like to see your faces, with a bowl of Fruit Loops and, playing solitaire on the computer beside you, people notice that. That's an outward expression. Telling people on a different level of something you're interested in doing. If you're 23 years old right now and you want to be an international FIBA official, you should have already let somebody know. And so if that hasn't happened, correct that. You might not be quite there yet, but expressing that desire, asking a mentor or an assigner or somebody you trust, hey, what do I need to do to get to that level? What are some holes in my game? Those are outward expressions. Can I come to your pregame at the university on the weekend? These are outward expressions. Volunteering, being a part of a local board scenario, helping do evaluations on younger new officials. All of these things are expressions, outward expressions of an inner commitment. And people, rightly or wrongly, are going to judge you based on those expressions. If you're not available, if you can't be bothered to come out for dinner when some people are in town every once in a while, for a game and you go out after, I get it. We all have lives. I've got 4 kids. I'm not saying that you need to go out 7 nights a week, but there are some people that never go out after, and just consider that. Just consider how that's viewed. And you can say, okay, yeah, but whether I order a chicken and fig sandwich after a game shouldn't impact what kind of assignments I get. Okay, I understand that maybe doesn't improve your court performance, but the relationships we build with people and outward expressions are important, and people are watching and they matter. And you can say, well, it shouldn't, all you want, but I'm going to tell you it should. Because if you are somebody that wants to engage, if you are somebody that wants to develop these relationships with people, you will be a better on-court official. And so I'm going to argue that if that isn't a part of what you do decision-wise, again, it doesn't have to be every weekend, but that's a consideration that I think you should be making, especially if you're somebody that's feeling like you're at a plateau and you're stagnating a little bit in terms of the opportunities you're getting on the floor. And now that's not to say that, all these things we're going to talk about officiating are unimportant. And if you just, kiss a few butts over some pops after a game, that's, the overall thing. But I'm just telling you, it's part of the picture. Okay. So I'm moving from presence to in the present. So in the here and now, you're here now. That's a good thing. Like I said, your assigners are noticing who's on this call. They're noticing what people are doing while they're on the call. Maybe it's just a black screen with your name, but you're here and you're putting yourselves in the present. I had the opportunity to be in a presentation by a sports psychologist. His name was John Ferguson. He works with a lot of NHL players. He happens to be situated, in Edmonton. And so I was in a session with him. He was actually doing some work with like a 13-year-old boys hockey team that I was coaching. So we had him come out and talk to the boys. And he works with a lot of big NHLers. Braden Holtby was one of the guys he worked with. And he talked about how they really spend a lot of time being in the present within athletic performance. And elite performance requires that you can get your head into the moment you're in right now, as opposed to thinking about that goal you just let in or that call you just missed, or worrying about the next call or what the coach might say in the future. And if you've ever seen goalies, and I never realized this is what they were doing, but Braden Holtby does it for sure. He pulls his water bottle out. They obviously need water, but before he'll spray the water bottle into the air and watch it go up and come down. And then he's like collecting his thoughts. He's actually doing more than just drinking water. He's actually focusing on the water. It's actually just that idea that I'm going to pick one thing that's happening in the here and now. By focusing on the water shooting into the air and coming down, I'm in the present. My focus is in the present. So it's a way of realigning focus. And I thought that was a really interesting way to do that. And so if we can find things in games we're doing where we can get ourselves into the present, find something that's happening in the here and now, that might be a way we can help align ourselves if we find ourselves drifting. Or maybe you can help a partner if you see them focusing on that, block charge call that they just feel like they kicked and everybody's booing and it's getting to them. We've all been in those situations, but having some real tools that actually can help us with that. The other thing about being in the present is a lot of times we focus on the end, meaning the gold medal game, that big assignment, doing the high school championship or a club final or whatever that might be. We focus on success as being a measure of the end. And so, we'll make all these sacrifices. It's going to be tough. We'll have ups and downs. But in the end, it'll be worth it because I got the gold medal game. I got the final. I'm going to tell you, if I could ask you to take one thing out of this presentation, it's just for yourself, it has to be worth it today. So not that we aren't working towards things. We're going to talk about goals and vision here in a second, but find something that makes it worth it to you today. What is worth it for you right now at, after 7 o'clock Eastern to be part of a Zoom call? So if we can do that on a regular basis, I think we will really maintain a good anchor for our development as officials. And it might just be, you want to drop a few pounds. It might be you want to walk into a gym where, those kids get to play basketball because you're there and you want to participate and very community minded. It might be because you have an elite goal. they're all elite goals, and there's a place for all of them. So, think about that. Find something that's worth it today, and not just sort of, hey, because don't all get that gold medal game. And so you want to sort of have justified your existence as a referee, whether it's been the last week or two or month or two or years or two, that if you don't get that game, it doesn't work. So when we talk about in the present, let's start with the why. So the power vision, like, why are you doing this? What is it for you? I know when I started out refereeing, I did it because my dad was a referee. A lot of you would maybe know my dad. Some people that aren't in Alberta or in Western Canada, maybe not. My dad refereed for 64 years. He started when he was 14 and he retired from refereeing when he's 78. So he refereed 64 years. I think when he was 75, he refereed 273 games that year. Like, that to me is nuts. I've never done even close to that in a year. He loved it. He loved it. My dad was also deaf. Both of my parents were deaf. So maybe being a deaf referee is the way you can last 64 years on the court. I loved going to games with my dad. When I was 8 years old, I used to be the scorekeeper in men's league games when I was 8. And I remember guys be like, hey, are you getting that right? And I'd blow them off. I'd be like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. I was 8 years old and I was already cocky. John doesn't believe it, right? But so that's how I started. But when I was a hockey ref first, because I grew up in a small town and I could just walk to the rink and ref hockey games. Edmonton was a half-hour drive into town, and so I wasn't driving. And then, what happened is, in the beginning, basketball paid more than hockey, and my hands didn't get cold. So when I was a teenager, I was 14, my feet started to grow. I could fit into my dad's shoes, not quite his shirt so well, but that's the only one we had. And, I remember my first game, I was reffing with a guy named Howie Farrell, a fantastic dude. And he told me, you watch your sideline, I'll take care of everything else. And some people, it's funny, I think I heard it in another seminar, they use that as sort of a negative thing, like I'm not trusting that person. I was 14 refereeing a Div 9 men's game. That was like a gift from heaven for Howie to say that. And I know that half the time, probably more than half the time, I messed up those line calls. And it was an old P whistle. Talk about presence. P whistle. I was like this. That's how I blew it. But I did it because it was $25 a game and hockey was like 16. I didn't start out thinking, oh yeah, by the way, I'm going to, go ref for national basketball, and I'm going to go to tournaments in Bangkok and get to hang out with people and do gold medal games at university ads. I didn't even know about international basketball. I mean, I knew it was sort of a thing. I didn't know it was an opportunity for me until one time, Jake Steinbrenner was an evaluation chairperson at Edmonton at the time. And he just, at the start of the year, back when we used paper, it's this thing that is like white and you scribble on it with carbon. Some people called them pencils. And then, you filled out your name and your registration information, and it had a thing on it. What is the level of basketball you aspire to referee? It's just a very simple question. There was a few boxes, like high school, college, university, international. And I remember thinking, well, I'll check that box off. International. Well, why not? I'm checking boxes. Sweet. That was the first moment I even thought it was a possibility, even a goal. And so it's amazing how quickly sparks can start, and it doesn't take a lot. And I just kept doing it. And I was in university. It was a great way to make some extra bucks. You just get some better games. I just wanted to do better games. And I didn't hate the games I was doing. Just when they said, hey, you want to ref a college game? Yeah, that'd be great. Was this fast? Couldn't keep up. Refereed a university game. The first time I refereed a 3-person, back then, we didn't referee a 3-person anywhere but at university men. And my first university men's exhibition game, I'd ref like a men's league game with some other people just to try it out. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. And it was so fast. And the ball went out of bounds. And I don't think I even blew my whistle the first time. They were all just looking at me. I get it. There are elite opportunities, and oftentimes we focus on them, but we focus on them in a way to say, listen, there is something here. But again, it doesn't have to be just why. I didn't start out with why. That wasn't my why. That wasn't my vision. My vision was I wanted to make a few bucks doing something I liked doing. I liked playing basketball. I liked refereeing. I had a family history in it. And, it just built from there. It built from there. So after the why, the what. I talk about presence before in terms of image, fitness. I like this Dr. Seuss quote, "You're in pretty good shape for the shape you are in." That can go all kinds of ways, that quote. I figure if you got a presentation, you can work in some Dr. Seuss magic, that it's all good. Might go downhill from here. This might be the pinnacle, but fitness and body conditioning is an interesting one, because again, at the higher levels, the demand is there. I'm going to call it a demand. If you're not in great shape, people obviously notice it. It's going to inhibit your ability. That doesn't mean there aren't people that couldn't afford to lose a few pounds that aren't getting great games because they're great referees. But when you're planning, when you're starting with the what kind of things am I going to do to make myself a better official? Getting in good physical condition is really important. And that doesn't just mean with pounds, because there's all kinds of body types. It means being in good fitness, in good shape. We don't all have to have washboard abs, but we should look like we're athletic on the floor. The other thing I'm going to say about this, and when I talk about outward expressions and inner commitment, for some people who might consider themselves overweight, or maybe somebody's talked to them about it and say, hey, you need to lose a few pounds if you want to get to that next level. If you do it, you actually gain more, because it's something that's noticed so quickly by people. If you were struggling with your weight, maybe you got the COVID-20 or the COVID-15 or whatever that number is, and you drop that weight because you discipline yourself and you just make it a goal of yours, people are going to notice it, and they're going to be like, oh man, Perry's taking this serious. Like, he really wants this. It's almost interesting in a level, because you almost get a little bit more cachet than the person that just maintained the whole time, because you did something dramatic that people noticed. So again, fitness is one example, one part of the picture, but it's something you can completely control. I understand we all have, different body types and stuff, of course, but there is a discipline that goes along with physical fitness that will help you in other areas of your game as well. So we good so far? Any questions in chat? I know John and Enrique were covering it for me.
There's one question,
John.
There's one question in the chat, Perry. They want to know if you recommended that sports psychologist for your Oilers.
Wow. I don't have enough time to get into that for this conversation, but yeah, sure. I'd recommend a Ouija board for my Oilers if it would help. So, okay, let's talk about the how. So why, what, and how. Now, a lot of times I know the idea of knowledge is power kind of getting thrown out as sort of a kitschy sort of thing. And, but, I like this. This is actually a quote I got. It was an article I was reading. It was out of a business magazine. So again, work life, I was like, this is like refereeing 101. So the more knowledgeable and prepared you are, the better outcomes you'll create. There's a direct relationship between your preparation and the results you achieve. This came out of an article talking about negotiating tactics in contract negotiation, but I think it completely applies. And I like, if you couldn't tell already, the part of sort of internal personal power here. Chart your course. Be the architect of your success. These things are connected. And it's really interesting. We talk about, the why, the what, the how. I'll tell you a quick story. I had a friend that was taking a scout group out for a hike, a mountain hike. And as young men are apt to do, they complain when they're walking. And this one kid goes, why is this all uphill? And my friend who was leading this group, he said, because where we want to be is up there. And so if that's your destination, you need to do the things that are going to get you to that destination. And I thought that was very profound. I came across another story of a situation where an individual was writing an SAT in the States. So most of us know what SATs, but typically you write them in your grade 11 year. It's used as a college entrance exam. It has a score of 1600 as max, and half of it's math and half it's like reading and writing comprehension. And so, if you get a good SAT score, you increase your opportunity to go to universities, and the very best universities, you need a wicked high score. But if you struggle in your SATs, it can compromise your ability to get into college. And so this person was not a great student. He was a poor student, in fact, skipped class, whatever. And he's writing the SATs, and he's just, it's like the worst exam he's ever written. He's just bombing this thing like you wouldn't believe. And he just walks out of this thing. He finished it all. He walks out of this thing. He's like, couldn't believe it. Gets his score back, 1440, which is an exceptional score for an SAT. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, okay, well, clearly this person, it was one of those people that need to be taught differently, just needed a standardized exam to, unlock his potential. And that wasn't it. As soon as he saw that score, his mom was like, what the? And he's like, yeah, I don't know what happened. And so what did he do? He had this 1440 score, which gets you into colleges, but didn't have the work ethic. So he went, you know what? The people he hung around with that skipped class, he didn't hang around with them anymore. He went to class every day. He studied at home. He did all of the things that were going to be the architect, engineers of his success, got into college, largely based on his exceptional SAT score. Went on to Wichita State, went on to get an MBA, ended up being like the CFO of a huge company. 14 years later, got a notification in a random sort of quality control check of SAT scores. His score was a mistake. He actually scored 740 on that SAT, not 1440. It wasn't going to cost him anything at this point in his life because all these things he achieved. He went to college, he did the work. So the idea is you do the things that are going to get you there. And that's what he did. The behavior predates the success. You have to do the work. And again, putting yourself in the proper situations, connecting with the proper people, being on Zoom calls, taking these things, making changes in your life are going to lead you to that place you want to be. And you get to decide what that is. You get to decide what that is. When we talk about covering the basics, rules, mechanics, attitude, it's interesting how attitude I've got here as a basic. It is basic. I think it is the quickest way for us to compromise our success. And I talked about that earlier, post games, whatever, our attitude, are we always flipping off, ideas? Are we sitting in the stands and just, raging against the machine on a regular basis? It really matters. And again, this is this thought about expressing your desire. Say you want it. I would like to know what it's going to take to be a referee at international basketball tournaments. Whether maybe it's a commissioner, maybe it's a table crew personnel, because all these things, maybe it's a video operator. That's recent. We just got some, requests for new, skilled video operators in terms of working with the referees. There's a quote I love. Extra discipline makes up for a lack of talent, and a lack of discipline quickly siphons away extra talent. That's why it's frequently the most disciplined that rise to the top, and not the most gifted that rise to the top. And, I found this to be an example in my life. We talk about talent, and, I understand talent's important, and some people may have some natural inherent talent, but I'm going to use a university analogy again. I was a pretty good student in high school. I got good grades, and it wasn't any trouble for my parents. Like I mentioned, they were deaf, so my mouth couldn't get me in trouble. When you walk into a room in university, everybody was an honor student in high school. So now what? You're in a room full of 400 honor students. So what is going to separate you moving forward? And it's the same thing with basketball refereeing. Desire and expressing it, and discipline is really important. I'll use a beep test example. Beep test is a good one because it's a very objective measure. It's something FIBA uses as an objective way to measure your fitness. If I tell you that the beep test is an objective way to measure your fitness, and your answer is yeah, but, and you tell me how it doesn't really measure your fitness and all these reasons it doesn't work, you're taking yourself away from the path of success. Okay. I've been in beep test situations with 29 people, all lined up. Maybe we have to run in a couple groups because the gym's not that wide. Where I know the fact that I'm in a room with 28 other people is good for an extra 20 laps, right? But you'd be surprised. I've been in situations where a person beside me had not practiced the beep test before that moment. That was surprising to me, shocking, in fact. And the beep test, along with an on-court evaluation and a rules exam, are the three components of becoming a FIBA official. Obviously, there's lots of build up to that in terms of your court performance and getting your name put forward and the opportunity to be at those camps. But those are the three things that they measure. You know, you can practice the rules exam. They're the most difficult rules exams you're ever going to have. I'm going to throw that out there, but you can practice them. They're open book. And again, the subjectivity of the on-court one is pretty tough to plan for. You just got to prepare. But the beep test, you can do that all day long. Practice it. I ran it a bunch of times for the first time I was going to do it. I remember Vladishenko, he let me in his gym. He was helping me out, and I was running it. I remember one day I would, like, back when you can go in public with a cold. I know you can't do that now, but you know, my nose was running back when you were allowed to just tuck a Kleenex under your arm and just tough through it. And I got the keys to the church, and I went and I practiced. I was like, I don't know, maybe I'll have a cold that day, and my lungs will be tough. And I was running it, and I did the beep test. These are ways that you need to be disciplined. Beep test is an easy one, but it doesn't matter what we're talking about when we talk about officiating and stuff. It is the same for everything in terms of that and our discipline. You will siphon away talent without discipline, and I'm sure you've seen it on a personal level, again, in any walk of or area of your life. We've heard these themes of good, better, best. I know it's a theme that Mike Thompson's referred to in different trainings and teachings. We hear that a lot. And so I'm going to present to you a couple of good, better, best ideas that I've got when we talk about developing as a basketball official. And I think that this is going to apply, honestly, anything in my presentation is going to apply whether you're a starting out official or you've been doing it, 25 plus years. It doesn't matter who the person is that's offering your feedback. Joke off the top, John gave sort of a mini CV. Does it matter to you that I've done those things in my presentation? Like, does that then justify the rest of the things I'm saying or sharing, the ideas I'm sharing with you? Okay, maybe on a level, maybe that's, you think those things have contributed to my success. I would agree. And so, but, it doesn't mean that I just, these things just happen, right? And so it's interesting, the CV part, when we have like a new official, if they ask me a question about something they saw me do, they might be right. Or it's a good way to get an idea of perspective. I learned pretty early on in my career that I could see how people referee, and I was like, that's maybe not the best way we could do that. And figure out how I could improve on myself and what I saw. And I think that's really important. Sorry, did somebody have a question, or was that just an open mic thing? Got a question? Is there another one in chat there, John?
We're good, Perry. Okay.
So good, better, best. So good. So when we talk about starting on officiating or having any kind of thing, passion is good. A love of the game, a love for officiating, a love for people. Passion is a great starting point, and it's good. I'm not saying these are crummy, pretty, all right, and fair to middling. These are good, better, best. When we can take that passion and turn it into action, you're going to see success. And, that comes in different ways, but you're going to see success. And I've known that to be true. I've experienced that countless times. And mentorship. When we can take a passion for basketball, we participate, we're there, we're present, we're in the present, and we act as mentors and share and connect. Sometimes you might think, I haven't been doing it long enough to be a mentor. You can be a mentor and have an influence and impact on somebody 5 seconds after you walk in the door. There's plenty of people that have a need of a friend and somebody they can just bounce things off of. That's mentorship too. And, it's a great way to connect and expand our enjoyment and what we get out of this game, for sure. I'm going to talk about feedback. And so I'm going to focus on the word critical. We hear that a lot, critical feedback. So I want you guys to think in terms of giving and receiving feedback. Some synonyms perhaps for critical. Cynical is a synonym. demeaning, cutting, belittling. These are what I'd say are sort of negative synonyms, but they can all form a part of feedback, right? I can give you plenty of feedback. You know, it was a little bit cynical, that Dr. Seuss quote, I guess, right? You're in great shape for the shape you're in, you know? But the idea that, you know, we're sort of trying to wear each other down. That isn't the purpose of feedback. It shouldn't be. And if it is, please just look in the mirror and adjust, because it is not collaborative and it's not positive. And, you know, especially in this game where we need people, even from a personal standpoint, you know, in terms of expressing ourselves to people. Again, I mentioned the positivity and, you know, penetrating, humbling, discerning, vital. So I think these are sort of the more positive aspect of these things. I would say, you know, vital feedback. Is it something you need to share with somebody? Is it going to help them? You think, and I'm thinking again as an evaluator, maybe even as it could be as a teammate, as a, you know, if we're working together on a crew. But, you know, the word that I think that really comes to my mind that's the most important is honest feedback. Not critical feedback, but honest feedback. And we need to be honest with each other. And I think that's the best for us to communicate with each other. You know, this is a statement I want to spend a little bit of time on. My willingness to share honest feedback with you says more about what I think of you than it does what I think of your performance. And what I mean by that is, if I'm not willing to be honest with you, I think to myself on a level, if I'm like, oh, I don't think she can take it. It's not going to make a difference. It's not going to improve their situation. They're not worth it. See, all of these descriptions have nothing to do with the performance itself. And so if I think enough of you, if I value you enough to share honest feedback with you, that's a good thing. It means I value you. And so keep that in mind when somebody's sharing honest feedback with you. They're doing that because they value you. And that should have some cachet when we talk about that communication and that interaction. You know, I think that's really important to consider as we're giving feedback. So if I was to ask you guys, and you can either type it in the chat, or if somebody wants to unmute themselves, you can unmute yourself and just call it out. But in that statement, my willingness to share honest feedback with you, what word or words or phrase, what jumps out to you? Is there any of those words, anything that, you know, when you hear that, you might, that doesn't make a lot of sense? Or is there something that sort of strikes you? What words jump out? Anything?
Honest.
Honest. So is that Calvin?
Yes, sir.
So what jumps out? What does honest jump out?
I think, well, I like that word because I like being honest with anybody I ref with, whether it's going to hurt them or not. But I, like I said, I value them, and I want to be honest with them, because they're not going to get better if you lie to them. That's what I think anyway. So I'd rather be honest with them.
I agree with you 100%. That's a great way to put it. I think the other thing that we learn with honest feedback is that we get better at giving it, right? And that's there's always two sides to every interaction. Okay, anyone else? Any other words that jump out at you? Strike a chord? Oh, we've got the chat. I'll just open the chat. Discerning, willingness. Nancy, I love the word willingness. So Nancy, are you on? Can you unmute yourself?
Yes.
So tell me why willingness jumped out to you.
Because you're putting yourself at risk for a conversation. So by doing it, you know, you're opening it up and you're trying to have that conversation and be helpful. But you put yourself at risk. So you have to be willing.
Yeah. So you've made a decision. Willingness is it's a powerful word, but it's a really good word, right? I'm willing. Will you? You know, in any kind of if you're ever in any training seminars where they're talking about improving presence and commitment and discipline, all these things start with the idea about asking somebody, will you, right? Will you? It's a way to get commitment from people. And in a personal commitment, we want to, we're willing to do this. We value you, like Calvin said. Great. Okay, and then Rob, I like your quote, shows the person cares about the other's development. And again, this is a quote I think we've heard. They may forget what you said or what you did, but not how you made them feel. And I think that's absolutely true. That's been shown time and again, and it does impact people in terms of enduring relationships, especially, right? And here's a quote that I think is pretty awesome. And you know what? I tried to find out who said this. I came across it and I couldn't find an attribution, which is too bad because whoever came up with this quote is brilliant. But I want us to consider this too. I'm just being honest is a poor excuse for being rude. Candor is being forthcoming in what you say, and respect is being considerate in how you say it. Being direct with the content of your feedback doesn't prevent you from being thoughtful about the best way to deliver it. I think that's pretty cool. I think how many times do we want to be honest and we're just going to give it to somebody because they need to hear it? Honest feedback, extremely valuable. I think we're all on board with that. And giving somebody direct feedback still doesn't mean that we don't need to be thoughtful about the best way to deliver it. How is it going to be received? How can we present it in a way that's going to be beneficial to this person that we're sharing this honest feedback with? And I love that. And you know what? To me, this is higher end stuff right here. But to take it even higher, this applies in the conversations with yourself. Just think about that. Sometimes we're too tough on ourselves. We need to be kind to ourselves as we're sort of assessing our performances or maybe it's a acute situation where it's that particular call or a particular interaction we had with the player or coach or another official, whatever that might be. Be direct with yourself, be honest with yourself. The best conversations we're going to have are with the ones in the mirror. That's absolutely true. But, think about how you can present it to yourself. Okay, somebody's got their hand up. Go ahead. I can't see your name, but I see your hand. Emmanuel, is that you? I think you're on mute. Are you? Oh, you're still on mute. I can't hear him. Oh, it's not working.
Hey guys.
Oh, there you go. All right. Have at her.
You're good. Hi to you. I'm at work. So I will be talking about being open-minded.
Open-minded.
Open-minded. So to be honest, so you have to be open-minded as well, because the person with who you share have to be open. In this way, you might not hurt him, and you will be confident to give him whatever you want to tell him. But if that person is not open-minded, your honesty will just hurt him instead.
That's true. And we use that. So you're really talking about being open-minded in the way we accept feedback from other people. And if we're not open-minded or willing to receive that feedback, we can be a barrier to our ability to grow. I think that's absolutely true. And we see that a lot, the yeah, but in a post-game evaluation. Hey, so yeah, but. Just receive the evaluation as it's presented. You can be interactive in a positive way, but accept what's being shared with you. And open-mindedness, Edward, I'm going to say works both ways as well. Everything we talk about in communication is both ways. You want to be open-minded in how you present it and how it's received. And the quicker you as an individual can be open-minded in terms of how you receive feedback, the quicker you're going to grow. And I've seen that. I mean, we used to not be evaluated that often. I remember, early 90s, there was this camp in Calgary. They had Clark Stevens, I remember, was one of the clinicians. Clark went on to move down to Arizona, has been reffing in the WNBA forever. Great dude. We got evaluated like 7 times in one weekend because we did a bunch of games and you got evaluated for a half. I'd been evaluated like once a year, like twice in the 5 years previous or something. And so you get really nervous when people are there to evaluate you, you know, and you do things you wouldn't normally do. It's like 7 times in 1 week. And it was like, I was cured of that. And I fed off that and wanted to get that, you know, feedback, just individually hearing about it. You know, I remember one tournament, it was the Western Canada, no, it was Juvenile Nationals is what it was. And Tim Heenan was an evaluator, and he walked in after the game one time. And Tim Heenan, great dude, from California, moved up to the island, so lived in Victoria, was helping Bill Crowley evaluate that tournament. And I still remember this to this day, which it's been 22 years. He walked into the room after, and he started to talk, and he was asking me about a play, you know, what did you see on this one? And I couldn't remember the play he was talking, you know, and maybe you've been there. They bring up a play and you couldn't quite remember it. And he just looked at, you know, the other person in the room and he goes, oh yeah, you know, I used to always remember those things when they happened to me in games. And it was like a knife. Ugh. And for those of you that have worked with me since then, you'll know that doesn't happen to me. It was like a thing. So if they're going to come in and talk about it, I'm going to know exactly what we're talking about beforehand. I'm going to remember those plays and situations in a game. I'm going to be prepared for that, so we can have an open dialogue. And that was a really powerful statement to me. And he was an amazing evaluator. And I really appreciate that. And clearly it stuck with me this long. And then to take the stretch to the next thing about expressing desire. After the tournament, I told Bill Crowley, who was our assigner for Canada West at the time, I said, listen, Bill, Tim was amazing. I would love to see him work. And they would travel some officials, not me at that time, because I was new. I'd been refereeing, you know, a year at the university level. And I said, if you get Tim to Edmonton so I could watch him work a game, that would be awesome. And I said, and if I could work a playoff game with him, or actually work a game with him is what I said, that would be even better. Later that year, I got to work a playoff series with him in Lethbridge. Do you think I would have had that opportunity if I had not expressed that desire? I might not have got it anyway. Maybe I wasn't a good enough official to do a playoff game. Maybe I was, but I would have done a playoff game with somebody else. But I guarantee you, expressing that desire helped me have that connection with Tim. And it was an amazing experience. And I think, you know, I learned from that as well. It was pretty cool. Okay. Yeah, so Candy's got a good quote. Randy Denoye, Randy, you like Vidal? Frank, I'm going to call on you, Frank. I'm going to pick on you. I see your comment, and sometimes we just have to call a spade a shovel. I need you to elaborate for me. I need you to elaborate. Because for those of you that don't know, in my day job, I work for a landscape construction company. So I'm all into the shovels. So tell me what you mean by having to call a spade a shovel.
Well, have you ever heard of the expression, we have to call a spade a spade?
Yes.
So when you have to call a spade a shovel, what I'm implying there is that we have to use words and terms that are respectful. Instead of calling a spade, you can express what you want to say to the individual to whom you're trying to speak in a very respectful manner, considerate of who and what he is, and understanding the best way that you might be able to help this individual. You know, instead of just saying, boy, that was a very poor call. I don't know why you would make that call. One might say, you know, as we look at those kind of situations, sometimes we just have to discuss how we might be able to present that just a little bit better. And so that's calling a spade a shovel.
Okay, so I'm with you on that if we're talking about expression. I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I think that's the vibe of what I'm sharing with you right now.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that you weren't going to suggest that the poor call is the spade or the shovel, because it is important in honest feedback and being open-minded and, you know, how we're going to frame that in, that we still are willing to address incorrect calls. You know, those of you that have been refereeing a long time probably remember it was pretty common saying, evaluators speak to say, hey, everybody can call the balls and strikes. So we won't worry about that. We'll just talk about, you know, standing farther off the baseline and how you rotate, things like that. That's not a true statement. Okay. Not everybody calls balls and strikes correctly. That's why we study the rules. That's why we study tape. That's why we review together after. And so I agree with you in the expression, but let's have the courage to be willing to say, listen, that's not the call we need to see in that moment. And then how you frame that in, 100%. I'm with you completely on that.
Well, in post games, just quickly, in post games, as an observer for CEBL officials, I always tell them what was, that the call was incorrect. And I express to them very respectfully, why I believe so and how we can improve on that. Just want you to make sure. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think it's always great when you can, frame that in the right way. At the end of the day, we have a lot of opportunities to evaluate, and it is a great way to get honest feedback from people. Yep. And that can happen even within games with partners, right? I mean, we do that all the time, right? What do you think about that one? Yeah, I don't want to match that call. We don't need that. Or, you know what? I was stacked. I didn't have a good look at that one, I guessed. These are conversations we can have with each other. So what I want to do, just to close here, is the idea of sort of tying it back into marketing and the idea. If I was to ask you, if you thought somebody would write a Google review about you, we do it for businesses all the time. We talk about their service. We talk about the quality of their fish tacos. But if they were going to write a Google review, be honest with yourself, right? What do you think they would write about you? And I've actually got some 5-star and 1-star reviews that are actual reviews. I just copied and pasted them just off various websites, internet stuff, restaurants, whatever. She was attentive and knowledgeable. She is a huge asset. Good 5-star review. Huge letdown in service. They should adjust so they don't create false expectations. A 1-star review. I love this one. Answered every question, even the stupid ones. Does that not sum up officials? Like, that's perfect. If you could get that in your 5-star review, fantastic. It took 3 separate inquiries to get an explanation of what happened. Some of these look like I'm actually just describing a basketball game. I probably thought I talked to coaches. These are restaurant reviews, right? He's honest and good. I know some of the stuff he did was not in his job description. Was very patronizing. Kept sighing and yelling at us to come here or go there. So maybe as a challenge, I'll give you an assignment, right? Write your Google review. Start with the one that's right now. If you could be honest with yourself, what do you think people would say about you? Would they say, oh, he's pretty patronizing. Oh, he could learn to smile a little bit more. Oh, he thinks he's always right. Those are some out of mine, by the way. And maybe write a goal. Like, sometimes we have goals about games we want to do. Maybe it's how many pounds we want to trim off the scale. Maybe it's what we want to and are allowed to go somewhere. Whatever it might be, and maybe have that be a goal. I want my Google review to look like this. Will people say, do they already? Will they say things like this about me in that 5-star review column? Am I a 5-star review kind of guy? And I think when we can do that, it's just sort of a different way. It gives us a different perspective on how we're perceived. Because a lot of times that's the one thing about perception is that I talk about, the conversations you have in the mirror, but a lot of times we don't have as a clear picture of what other people think of us as we think we might. And, I think it can be a good exercise in terms of, getting that interactivity and bringing people in. And also putting us on a path of constant sort of, day after day, improvement, if you will. I talked off the top about finding that one thing that makes it worth it every day to you. For me, it's that. It's improving. If there was a day that I didn't think I had an opportunity to learn something or improve on something in that basketball game that day, that to me is the time that it's time to get out. Every time. So I mentioned I was 14 as well. So I'm, 48 years old, almost 49 now. So 35 years almost, I've been refereeing basketball. Every day, if I'm stepping on the court, I still feel like I've got something I could do better, I could improve on, I could learn. And that can be, there's a million things that can mean. It can mean interaction with each other, interaction with myself. It can be how I talk to myself. It could be my self-talk in the game, the words I use, the position I take on the floor, where my eyes are, how quickly I focus on my primary, all these things. And that's what really inspires me on a day-to-day basis to keep participating. And that's where I find it's worth it today for me to give up those other things. And, you know, I'll just close on this one thought. You know, I talked earlier about mentorship. You know, you might think some of these things I expressed, and people will say, hey, yeah, that's a good idea. I should find myself a mentor. And if you don't have one or someone that you connect with, yes, you should. But like I said before, also consider the fact that you have a lot to offer. And it doesn't matter if you've been refereeing 6 months or 6 years. You have a lot to offer. And so look for those opportunities to serve. It doesn't necessarily need to be in a local executive. It can be that, but just, you know, serve your fellow official in the moment. Look for ways to thoughtfully express honest feedback. You know, these are opportunities we have on a regular basis because, you know, like I said with John off the top, our relationships are lasting and they're powerful. And the best thing about basketball is who we get to referee with. Full stop. Full stop. And, you know, that to me is the greatest thing about what we get to do together. And so, yeah, thank you. And that's all I got, but I have some time for questions. If there's a few that want to come out and we can say and go through some stuff.
Any questions for Perry? We can, you can unmute yourself or you could write them in the chat box, please.
I will say as we're doing that too, there's my email address. So perrystothart@gmail.com. If you guys want to cut me an email anytime, by all means, fire one away. Whether you have questions about this presentation or something you think about later, or it's just something totally unrelated, I'm totally cool with connecting with you on that level too. All right, I'm gonna stop my screen share so we can all get back and maybe see some fun faces here, a few more of them. All right, so I jump through the chat here. Okay. So let's go back. So Candy, Terrence, thanks for sharing about your dad. I love that connected. It's obviously a big part of our family. My grandfather was a basketball ref too, not as seriously as my dad was. But you know, it's been a cool thing. And my dad, before he passed away, he actually passed away a couple of years ago of pancreatic cancer. And pancreatic cancer is a tough one. You know, I don't get too emotional at the end of this too, but you know, my dad, you know, he's a pretty good sized dude, 6 feet tall, you know, 200 plus pounds. You know, he was 120 pounds when he passed away. But he was 80 years old and he lived a good life. And, you know, he passed away at Christmas time a couple of years ago. And the May before he passed away, he got inducted into the Alberta Sports Hall of Fame. And we found out about it the November before. We knew he was sick and weren't sure he was going to be able to make the banquet. And he made the banquet. And it was a pretty awesome night. We had to wheel him up on the stage. But he ate up every minute of it. And it was funny because he grew up on the Combe, and that's where the banquet was in Red Deer, a town just between Calgary and Edmonton. And a lady who went to high school with him came up and wrote him a note because she remembered he was deaf. And she wrote him a note just talking about high school and how she thought he was a superhero in high school. And it was just a cool moment. And that kind of stuff is why we do this. It is what makes it great. And there are opportunities like this all over the place. I'm sure, Nadine, I can't see in my screen now, you're probably nodding your head because it probably speaks to your experience. And we share that. You know, it's pretty amazing. And, you know, the friendships I've got, the opportunity to travel the globe. And the really cool thing about traveling the world for basketball is that you have a purpose for being somewhere always. And you have friends everywhere you are, right? whether it's 20 or 40 officials, you have instant friends you get to go walk around with and hang out. And whether it's, you know, in Prague, and for the first time in my life, because I don't drink. And so for the first time in my life, the beers are cheaper than the Pepsi in Prague. And so I was the most expensive meal on the ticket. I was looking at this thing, what the heck? And it's funny. Why should I be remembering those kinds of experiences, right? But that's what they are. And it's so cool. And yeah, okay. So Nancy's asking me, do you sign being a CODA? And so it's interesting. CODA is a child of deaf adults, or child of a deaf adult. And that's getting a lot of press right now because there's an Apple TV show. And the answer is yes. I do know sign language. I'm the oldest of 3 boys. And so when I was born, it was just me and my parents at first. And so I was signing before I was talking, actually. It was my first language, was ASL. And you know, back in the day when they used to give you your referee assignments over the phone, I would take the phone calls from my dad and write down his assignment. So when I was 4 years old, I would answer the phone and write down my dad's assignments. And then the assigner met me, and he wanted to meet my older brother because he couldn't believe, but I was used to communicating that way. And so, you know, for sure. Yeah, it's sign language rocks. And I'm still a very, you know, body language sort of kind of person, because if you know anything about ASL, body language is a huge part of communicating. And I can read lips across a room, which is always fun. So Raymond's wondering that, do I still remember the first game you blew your whistle on a game, and what made you do another game? That is a great story. So I'm going to tell you, game 1, I told you Howie Farrell, he was amazing. It was a fantastic experience. I was 14 years old, 5'7" and 110 pounds, refereeing 45-year-old men who thought they were Larry Bird, just to take you back. I got a lot of, it's okay, kid, I was as bad as you when I was your age. But not in the first game, because Howie was my man. He protected me. He had me. My second game, I was refereeing another official. I won't sell him out, but he worked in the CFL. And so if you know anything about football refs, you can say anything to a football ref and it's just no big deal. And because that's the culture of that game. And so they were all saying that, you know, we're yelling at him because I was obviously much younger. And then he would just keep pointing at me. Well, don't look at me. That's his call. And it was the worst experience of my life because, you know, all I got was, you can only get better. It didn't sound like a compliment in the moment. And that was my second men's league game. And I did not ref another game that year. I was like, I'm not driving into Edmonton for this. We didn't have community basketball back then. There wasn't the opportunities. And I got back into it a little bit more when I got to university, like I said, and it being more of a, you know, not just the odd time. And I did some community games where I, you know, drive to the other small town when I was in high school to referee the junior high games and make a few bucks with a buddy and flirt with the other grade 9 girls that thought we were cute because we were the grade 12 boys that were coming on over to referee some games. But that's, I definitely still remember it. And my first game was, you know, 1987. So still remember it. Nick. So Nick says, another official who also started refereeing hockey. Do you find any similarities or differences apart from being on the ice that really stand out at either sport? And do you find refereeing hockey helped have a thicker skin on the court? So hi, Nick. For all you guys that don't know, Nick V lives in Vernon, just north of Kelowna. And Nick and I went golfing this summer. It was a great time. Nick was a much better golfer than me, which isn't saying much, but and yeah, you know what? Whether you're a softball umpire, a hockey ref, volleyball official, whatever, there is always cross training that goes on. I would say the thing about hockey, now I'll say it even works the other way, because I've gone back to refereeing some more hockey in the last few years because my younger son was into hockey and he wanted to ref it. And you can ref hockey younger than you can ref basketball, at least around here. Like in Edmonton, they like to be, you know, they like you to be about grade 10. Whereas in hockey at 13, you can start refereeing the younger ages. And so I went back out with them. And so the one difference about hockey is that it's fast and the ice surface is really big. So that's a little bit of a difference. You have to work harder to get your open look. Sometimes you're just way behind the play. So that's one difference. The one thing that I will say that crosses over, like having open looks is important. That helps you, but because you're on such a big ice surface, that's not always possible, and they're moving so fast. But I'll say the one thing that absolutely does cross over to me the most is the idea of identifying lizards, lizards and dragons, problems, troublemakers, dealing with something small before it gets to be something big. Whether that's with a coach, whether that's with players, and whether that's just with penalties. That to me is a thing, and I think something that hockey officials could do a better job of. Sometimes in general, I think officials can in any sport. They just let stuff build, and then it's like the top pops off. Whereas like our seismograph was doing this for the last 3 days, but we wonder how come the top just popped off right now, right? And identifying that stuff. So I think that's the one that crosses over the most. And having some communication. I don't know if you found this, Nick, but in hockey, I don't think they communicate as well with each other. It's almost because you have linesmen and they have a job, and you have referee and he has a job. But it's like, if I'm a linesman, I'd be like, hey, as a linesman, I'd be like, I could say to somebody in a basketball game, hey, make sure you watch out for that dude. He was, slashing people in the back of the leg. The refs are like, hey man, I got this. You're the linesman, I'm the ref. You know what I mean? There's a bit of that goes on, which is a little different, but I think they could learn from that, being more collaborative. And Nick says he never once had a pregame in hockey. Yeah. I've never reffed AJHL hockey, so the junior hockey. So I would say, but the lower levels, it's just like we do at high school often, right? We're running in the gym with our stuff in a bag, just whipping from work. For those of you in the GTA, that Gardner Expressway is no one's friend. I don't know how you guys do it. Maybe it's helicopters. They fly you to games. You live in the big time. But I think that we don't always have the opportunity for pre-games, but if we walk into the gym, there's one thing we can always have immediately, and that's a connection with the person we're working with. That takes seconds. And so I think there's something to be had there, because we can't always do big pre-games. But I'm with you. I hear you. Okay, Rich Fournier giving me a thumbs up on Tim Heenan. And another guy that's adding to the chorus of Tim Heenan being an awesome dude. So that's good to hear. Thanks for that, Rich. And Nick saying that Freddie Gunn, you show up with candy for your partners. That's always a good thing. For us.
For the score table.
Yeah, I understand. It was the score table. They talked about that in the other group, because Freddie would do that. He'd get to the score table when you're connecting with the people that started the game, and bring out, even with your score table, it's a great one. I'd actually heard that in another seminar just last week. But also, do your partners, do you know that you're, what's your favorite candy, Nadine, or chocolate bar? What is it?
Any chocolate bar.
Any chocolate bar. Okay.
I that's my kryptonite.
You had me
addiction.
At Choco, right? Whatever after
right.
that, it doesn't matter.
That's right.
So if I knew, let's just pretend it was whatever, O. Henry's, and I knew that about Nadine, and I showed up with an O. Henry just because, that's just a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's at a high school game. Honestly, that might be better than some of the hour pre-games I've had, because you have a connection with each other when you start the game. And if you have that, a lot of good can be accomplished for sure.
Mm-hmm. That's how Sergio Giordano and I became good friends.
Yeah, Sergio.
Mr. Hershey's.
For those of you Sergio Giordano, you might have heard the name. Sergio's in Calgary now, worked for Hershey's forever. So it was seriously, it was like a narcotics deal going down in the parking lot. You'd walk out back, and like Fonzie, Sergio would just pound on his trunk, and his trunk would pop up, and there was boxes of Hershey products you wouldn't believe, all kinds. The fruit and nut, whatever you want, it was there. So yes, lasting impacts come in all kinds of ways, often with chocolate.
Perry,
All
on
right.
behalf